Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. This week I have John Gooden, who is a UFC commentator and one of the best in the world. We talk about MMA, talk about the UFC specifically, about different fighters and about the mental fortitude that it takes to get to where he is and to pursue your dreams, and how he got to where he is right now, which is being a commentator on the biggest fighting organization in the world, pretty much. It's the number one place to be if you're a fight fan. So, I really enjoyed talking to John. Couldn't have been a nicer guy for coming on the podcast, taking some of your questions that we posted on Instagram and on Reddit. So we had a really good time. I mean, I know I had a really good time. I hope he had a really good time as well. And without further ado, here is John Gooden. Hey, John, how you doing?
Doing good, my friend. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said before we started recording, I'm a big fan, and wanted to have you on for a while.
That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, man. So so first of all, I have to talk about the fights this weekend.
Okay.
And what did you think of the girls' fight versus the main event?
Oh, let's not do comparisons. But let's.
One was just so good. It was almost impossible to compare anything after that fight, right? It was once in a year or once in a, I don't know how. It's an amazing fight,
dude. That I think that fight will stand the test of time. That fight right there is, as Dana said, is going into the Hall of Fame. That is 100%. A fight it was just so epic. And it just shows the character, skill. It kind of had everything. It embodied everything about fighting. It was difficult to watch and see how Joanna in particular looked after the fight. But I've been around this sport for so long now, and fight sports in general, and I thought I'd seen pretty much everything. And Mark Hominick comes to mind. I know that we have had other instances of that, and I did think it was superficial, but I was very happy to see that she got released from hospital, and everything's good. So obviously that's great. She will always be the queen of the strawweight division. She's done so much to build that division. She was such an epic champion. She always brings something new, exciting, interesting into the octagon. But we have a very interesting champion in Chung Wei Lee. It's so good as a guy who was brought in on the kind of international tip. I'm not North American, and I'm over here kind of trying to still champion the sport of mixed martial arts in UK. It's very different to what it is in North America. And then to see other nations get represented or represent themselves as champions in the UFC is just fantastic. I was there when she won the belt. So I was working the ESPN desk, and she's just so charismatic. I like what she stands for. By the way, I think that fight could have gone either way. I haven't watched it back for a second time, but I don't think I would have. I wasn't. There's no sort of disappointment in there, but I wasn't kind of sitting there going, "Oh, that's a bad decision," or "That's what I thought." I honestly did not know. So it's just a very culturally significant and big fight for women's mixed martial arts, and then scrap all of that and just say what an epic MMA fight that was.
Yeah, men, women, regardless, that was just an amazing fight, and so ironic that it came on the same night that they inducted the Jones-Gustafsson fight into the Hall of Fame, because this one is definitely, and I was actually there. I drove from New York City up to Toronto, rented an Airbnb. I was there. I was like on the floor, saw Joe Rogan, saw everyone for the first time. That was like when I was just still kind of a newbie to MMA. I think it was 7 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
And I was there, and I think I didn't actually, I was like, wow, this is a great fight, but I didn't appreciate it as I would if I would have seen that fight today,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was an amazing fight then. And this was an amazing fight this weekend. And then I think
there was just nowhere to go up from there. Like it was only down. It was the main event could have been potentially as good, but there was just no way for it to be better.
Yeah, and of course, listen, it wasn't a great fight in terms of action. Yeah. It was it was a fight that showed on paper showed a lot of promise, but actually, when you break it down and you really think about it, am I surprised? I don't know if I am, because if you lay out all of the options of what it could have been, and then you start layering that with how important it is to be a champion and what comes with being a champion, and then the respective skill sets and the respect that was being shown on either side, and you start thinking, yeah, who's going to take the risks here? Like, if I'm Adesanya, do I really want to be throwing myself in close range to that monster and risk getting clipped? Or do I try and play on the outside and he's going to give me opportunities at some point? I mean, I'm not blaming either fighter, although I don't score fights like this, by the way. There is a notion of go take it from the champion. You know, the champion's the champion. Like, he can just, much like John Jones does, stand tall, fight you at range, come and get it. And Joel didn't really do that for me. But at the same time, I don't really see that narrative being played out in the octagon a great deal. It was just a bit of a stalemate. And sometimes it can get a little funky in there. But at the same time, I think it's an interesting psychological breakdown and analysis. I know that's not what people pay their money for, but from my seat, I now look at that and think, well, that's pretty fascinating when you consider Yoel's age, the opportunity that he was given, the opportunities that have passed. You know, what does that mean for Adesanya? How is he reacting to this? What does that therefore mean for the Paulo Costa fights? Where does Yoel Romero go from here? Does he now, and what are we going to see next out of him? Because he obviously was frustrated, but there was also like a bit of a mad genius aspect to that, where I'm like, dude, you can't put all of this on Adesanya. You were responsible as well. So it wasn't what we wanted, I guess, but in a high stakes game, sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard, I think Dana White say this a few times, where he basically says there's no losers. Every time, just take Conor as an example. Like everyone always says, Dana really wants Conor to win, and then Nate goes, surprises everyone, has that one-liner that everyone still uses to this day, and a superstar was born. And I think no one expected that, and everyone thought, oh, Conor, now that he lost, this is going to be really bad for the UFC. But that actually, that caused or made a second fight, and that made a superstar in Nate. And at the end, the UFC won, more fighters got, more money, and just it's a win-win overall. So I don't think it doesn't matter at the end of the day who wins. It's the story and the narrative will somehow unfold, and new stars will be born.
Yeah, we are spoiled as UFC fans. I'm not as in touch with boxing as much as I want to be, or historically how much I have been. And I feel like you have to wait a decent period of time before the next big fight comes around in boxing. Whereas in the UFC, not just MMA, in the UFC, because there were some really great fights this weekend going on around Europe. And we had Bellator. Didn't Bellator have a card as well? Was it on Friday?
I think they usually have it on the Friday, right?
Yeah, I think. And then we had Invicta that had recently had a crazy show as well. So but the UFC, just the UFC product, week to week, we have spectacular, meaningful collisions of, big stars. And that's why it just keeps on rolling. And even when these big stars go away, a lot of people were talking about the hiatus of Conor and Ronda Rousey, retiring, officially, unofficially, whatever it might be. And yet Israel Adesanya has appeared in that time. We see the growth of Habib as well. That the gap gets filled. I mean, they might spread the load a little bit. I'm not saying that these athletes are quite as big as Conor, but Zhang Weili may well be as big as Conor in China right now. I'm not sure, but the numbers that I've seen, the impressions that they're getting over there are spectacular. They have just such a big populace that are excited by this new phenomenon.
Yeah. So what do you think? Because I was thinking about, I think they were talking about this at the event, that X factor, right? You have people like Conor, Ronda, Adesanya, even Sean O'Malley. He has, I don't know, I think 2 fights in the UFC, 500,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
All he has to do is basically win, I think, 1 or 2 more fights, and then they're gonna put him in at a title contention. What is that X factor? Other than obviously you have to win fights, but there's something there. I think you really can't put your finger on it, but there's something that people have where they have this charisma or good looks, or just, like they say, quote unquote, the full package that just blows them up to superstardom somehow very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing. I clearly don't have any of those because my numbers aren't anywhere near what these cats are doing.
I think you have to be 25 or 26 for that
right?
to work. You have to be in your 20s. That's the law. That's the rule.
I'm only just outside as well. I wish
you just missed it. You just missed it.
Yeah, by a good amount of years as well. I think. Well, look at Conor, for example. He literally corralled a nation. He got an army behind him. Timing is relevant, I think, and his situation just hit all the notes at the right time. And when together we are stronger, almost, when a part of the world is making that much noise, then you're gonna listen. And the Irish fans, Irish folk in general, are they're just so good. They're really good fun. They're loud. They're not aggressive and moody. They come with a party celebratory atmosphere. It's a good thing to have around and to enjoy. And then we got to we have to think about the epicenter of the UFC is in Las Vegas. It's an English-speaking nation, obviously. So if you are an English-speaking athlete, you're at an advantage straight away, unless you do stuff that just goes beyond the boundaries of just language, like Anderson Silva. He was a huge star, of course.
Yeah.
But then I'm not sure that he became a household name like some of these other athletes that are English-speaking and people could just relate to them a little bit better. You've got Sean O'Malley. Now, I don't actually know a great deal about him. He's not someone that necessarily resonates with me. I see that he's got an interesting appearance. He is flamboyant. He carries himself with confidence. But I think he's a really big gamer. And I know that gaming is just, I know, but I don't understand.
It's huge.
Absolutely huge. A friend of mine is like a host for these things. And he's had like 30, 40,000 people inside a stadium while they're about to go, battle it out with, do they do joypads now? I don't even know what they are. Controllers. Gaming controllers.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Yeah, it blows my mind.
And I think that then you add in the whole YouTube culture, the vlogger, you're combining a lot of these elements, nothing new, and you're just giving people that access. And I think a lot of these people have genuine things about them that are funny, interesting, wacky, whatever it might be. And that key audience that everyone's after, the kind of 18 to 34, 35-year-old audience, they're just going mad for this. And then older folk like me, for example, we appreciate the athleticism and we enjoy celebrating all of the good that comes with it. So, I think that there's many things. My dad used to say to me when I was a little bit younger, so it doesn't matter what you do, you can make money at anything. You just got to be really, really good at whatever it is. Like really focus and become an expert and just be authentic. I think authenticity is a big thing as well, because people will see through a lot of the BS otherwise, and just run with it, you know. And a lot of the people that we've spoken to have almost had blinkers on, and they're just gone for it regardless. You know, they've gone after it hard. They got the success along the way, but they have these other layers to their characters that are genuinely interesting, or there are big audiences available to them.
Well, your dad was definitely right. But nowadays, I don't think anybody thought 20, 30 years ago you could make a living, you know, posting videos of yourself eating food or gaming or quote unquote being an influencer or putting booty pics up on Instagram, or just, you know, I could go on and on. But I think the internet, social media has opened up a door that was completely either foreign or not even within the realm of common sense or reality, even just 10 to 15 years ago. So nowadays you could literally make money off of anything if you just commit. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's easy. It is work, and you have to create content, and you have to, you know, go, you know, put yourself out there. It's not easy, but if you really want to, you can really make money out of anything. And I think that kind of like leads what you were saying earlier, kind of is leading me to my next question. Do you think because there are some of these guys that carry themselves and you know, very well outside the UFC, and they're very good in social media or Twitch or whatever the format is, that they get a push from the UFC? So someone like Leon Edwards, for example, who's had to fight tooth and nail to get someone finally like Woodley. And then you have someone like, you know, I don't want to say names, but there are these fighters that their path to a belt or you know, or to the big fights is much, much shorter because they have maybe, you know, a big social media following, or because they have some charisma or that X factor that we talked about. Do you think there's something there, or do you think everyone is on an equal level playing field and they get, you know, it's all the same?
No, you've got to help yourself, right? You are given the opportunity. It's not the UFC's fault, you know, and use the UFC. Know that you have this platform now, and if they need, give them something to work with. And this goes for anyone in any walk of life. You know, if you want a boss to take notice of you, then give them something a little extra, a little different, something that they can shout about. You know, the sound bites that Conor used to create. And I just want to say, like, his social media following is huge, but yet never see him use a hashtag, rarely writes anything in a description. Like the ABC, the 101 that you would follow for strategy. Like when I look at his stuff, he doesn't do any of that. It's a lot of it is also recycled. These aren't always pictures that he's taken himself. And of course, now he has a full-time photographer. But it's like Conor, for example, is just like a flip book of photos. They're generally speaking, he's not out there with big inspirational speeches and captions associated with things. Yeah, we're seeing him when he wants to create a little rumble, but on the way up, just wasn't really about that. He let everyone else do the work for him. He just had to turn up in front of those cameras, and of course, he was getting the kind of performances that everyone wants. We live in a very shareable, small content, maximum 10-second, blah, blah, blah. You can fit like a lot of Conor's career into many of those 10-second clips, and they can go. If we unfortunately are comparing Leon Edwards, probably don't have many of those.
Yeah.
Now, Leon Edwards is just a fantastic example of someone who has prevailed from the most unbelievable beginnings. And I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I urge you to check it, and anyone that listens. BT Sport did a
I
little
saw
trailer.
it, yeah.
You saw this trailer?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
He finally opened up. Now, I've been interviewing Leon for years, and he's only recently now been starting to talk about his very humble beginnings. And I've spoken to his manager about this, and kind of, yeah, it's been difficult. I think the first guys was it Mark Raimondi maybe, was the first guy to get it out of him. The fact that he lived in Kingston, Jamaica, in what I believe to be was a shack, and his dad was involved in gang activity. They came over to the UK. His dad got killed, and then his mum was left to bring them up, and all of this stuff. It's in the UK. This isn't the norm, and the story and his path is crazy, and what he's achieved. Good, solid, hard work, straight and narrow, and like again, I've spent a fair bit of time with Leon now. Just the nicest guy. He doesn't seem affected by any of this, but he always kind of maintained that a man's business wasn't to be on the street. It wasn't to be out there. He didn't want to be leveraging this. He's just too honest. And unfortunately, when you're in a competitive marketplace where you're going up against these others, then you got to get involved a little bit.
You got to sell yourself.
Well,
you got to put yourself out there.
Well, he kind of he is, because he's an athlete, right? So he's selling himself every time he gets in the octagon. But if you want to be that little bit different, and if the guy right next to you is great, like Colby Covington is the guy right next to him. Do you know what I mean? So think about the
juxtaposition.
Headlines. It's just it, but I go back to being authentic, and he realizes that he has to be. There's no point in being something that you're not, and it's unfortunate that we're singling out Leon here. I don't mean. I'm not saying that he's.
No, it was just an example. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, no, I did that. So it's just. I also wanted to celebrate that piece of content that BT Sport did, and obviously we're going to talk about the fact that he's getting this main event, and also that maybe it's more of a marathon for someone like Leon than it is a sprint. But I know it myself. Like, I don't have big social media numbers. I don't have an agent. I've gone out and had many conversations with people over the years, and it always comes back to, if your numbers were stronger, then, maybe we can work with doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, but what about my work? Yeah, if your numbers were stronger, maybe we can. I'm like, so it doesn't matter how good my work is, what I do. Right now, a lot of people, the currency is simply about social media numbers. So, like, I'm having to up the ante. I don't even particularly I don't like spending my time completely immersed in social media. It's not always the most healthy place, but it's kind of everyone else is doing it. So if that's where work is going to be, then that's what we've got to do. And therefore, the reason why I give myself as an example is I've kind of learnt the hard way, spent probably 5 years avoiding it, but you've got to get involved. And the same goes for anyone in the UFC or mixed martial arts. They've got to look around, and they've got to start getting creative and be clever, because they don't want to be passed up. And it is now part of the game.
And that's kind of that kind of leads me to my next question. This was actually supposed to be my first question, but I got so excited to talk UFC, I could go on for 3-4 hours about this. So I actually want to talk a little bit more about you, because I'm interested in you. So I wanted to know, what was your path? How did you get into commentating? Is this, something you were always interested in, or was this gradual, evolution that led you to it?
Yeah, so my journey's been an interesting one. I'm not going to say that I necessarily harbored the desire to really do commentary. So I've been involved in martial arts and combat sports for the longest time. When I was 7, I was competing nationally in judo. So that was my first taste of it. But I was watching all the films like Karate Kid back in the day, and all
classic.
the Van Damme films. Oh yeah, and there were like No Retreat, No Surrender, or Bruce Lee. Always had a real interest in it. My dad we very sort of grew up very close to London, and my dad was very much into boxing. I did karate after judo. I ended up doing karate when I was at high school, early teenage years, and I was doing okay at that. But then none of my friends really got involved in martial arts, and I ended up going back to playing soccer. And eventually I went and started doing like the novice amateur boxing circuit, which was kind of, you would do that, then you would do you do novice ABAs, then the ABAs, and that would maybe qualify you for the Olympics. But I found it pretty late. So I was at university when I was doing this. I enjoyed it, but it's tough. But I knew that I was never. The ambition was to fight in the Olympics, but I was never going to be a world champion, and I knew that I wasn't ever going to really want to do that for a ways to make money. So again, I kind of stepped away from boxing to go back and play soccer with all my friends and my social network, etc. But the lure of combat sports always brought me back. And then I went and found a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, Muay Thai gym, and it all sort of converged with mixed martial arts. But around my early 20s, I really developed a sense for delivering information. And I started looking at TV broadcasters and thinking, I could do that. I think I could do that better than what they could. I had a bit of a purple patch, like socially. I was really going out and enjoying myself. Ladies were a big part of this equation. My confidence was flying high, and I don't know where it came from, but I was also in a recruitment consultant capacity. So lots of meetings and things of that nature, and selling and things. So and the TV world just seemed attractive. So I actually gave it a go. I quit like a pretty lucrative job in the city of London, and then pursued this new dream of getting on the telly. And it didn't actually work out. And I ended up working behind the camera a little bit. And at the time, it wasn't something that I was particularly interested in. And the weird thing was, and the reason why I tell this part of the story, is whilst I was there and I was at the BBC, they were looking for candidates to sort of join an apprenticeship scheme for sports commentary. And I remember looking at the pages going, I really want to do the TV thing. But, and this, again, this is all about like being authentic, right? At the time, I would have been doing it for the wrong reasons, just to kind of get some airtime maybe, but really I wanted to be the presenter. And I said no, I wasn't particularly interested. So I completely forgot about that. And eventually the TV thing just dissolved away. I nearly got the opportunity of a lifetime. It didn't quite happen for various reasons. So I just forgot about it. Ended up doing a massive U-turn, working for my dad's company as an electrician on construction sites for plus 10 years. And
oh, wow.
Everything came back around through mixed martial arts. I was looking to compete myself. I was training a bunch, and my coach had his own show. One time a channel sent down a reporter to do like a post-fight show or just kind of covering the event. And bless her, she did an awful job. She didn't know anything about the sport. And, she was kind of making a mockery of it because she was a bit uncomfortable and didn't really know what to do with the people that she was surrounded by. So I'm not blaming her, but I just then said to my coach, look, is there any way I can do that? Because back in the day, that was kind of the sort of thing that I wanted to do. And he was like, well, don't have any pull with this network that sent that person down. But I tell you what, we could do with some commentary. I'm going to get a couple of guys just film these fights, and it would be cool for the fighters to just have some words over the top of it, and we could maybe give it as part of their fight purse. You get a DVD and all the rest of it. So I thought, I'd gotten injured. I think, was I injured at this time? I had a pretty bad back injury, which set me out for about 5 years. Actually, I don't know if I had at this point. Anyway, I then just started doing commentary by myself, like a one-man booth for, 15, 20 fights on a card, a mixture of amateur and professional. And it just kind of snowballed from there. Right place, right time to get the Cage Warriors gig. And when the Cage Warriors gig went away, there was a very short period where I kind of got in touch with someone at the UFC and things were changing, this international expansion. And before you know it, 6 years ago to the day almost, I'm stood next to Dan Hardy calling Manuwa versus Gustafsson.
I love it. I love the arc of that story. He's starting in a little, dojo in England.
Yeah.
You're doing your own little thing. And a few years later, you're at the biggest organization in the world covering the biggest fights. I mean, I think that's something that's important for people to hear. I think a lot of times people will go on, again, back to social media, but they'll see people having fun and people traveling the world and driving fancy cars. And it looks like, they've made it or they're successful and it's so easy. But I think a lot of people, it's important for them to hear that to get to the job you want or whatever it is, whatever your dreams and goals, it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight and there's an arc and you have to work hard at it. And I think you embody that.
Yeah. Thank you. Firstly. And I just want to say when I first, got my dictaphone and plugged a little microphone into it at the Watford Coliseum, there was no ambition at that point. I didn't suddenly embody Mike Goldberg as I was sat there. I might actually I've done a bit of study eventually just to see how much more smooth I could make the broadcast. And all props to everyone at the UFC. They were the most well-oiled machine. So I was naturally looking to the way that they would format stuff because there was no producer at this time. I had no producer. I was literally like managing the airways. One-man show, start at whatever time and finish at the other time. I'm literally filling airtime between fights. A little bit of analysis myself, waiting for the walkout, cover the walkouts, and then the fight and post-mortem and just doing what I could. And the other thing is, and this is where I think I have had a bit of an advantage over some of the other guys that start calling fights at this level, not just the UFC, by the way, but at that point, there was no Google for these fighters that were about to step into the cage. Like they perhaps are just making their very first amateur appearance. So I would have to run into locker rooms whilst fighters are getting their hands wrapped and say, okay, Dave, what do you do for a living? How have you gotten to this point? And I would take a few little bullet points because I couldn't have this kind of conversation. And then I would have to find ways to flesh that out, find ways to weave it into the fight somehow. It didn't always work, but you would try your best to make connections in your mind, which then just helps you with those reps, storytelling whilst the fight's going on, giving people a reason to get behind these athletes more than just fighter X versus fighter Y. And why are they reacting the way that they're reacting? Just constantly questioning things and maybe coming up with a few solutions and answers. And that grind was pretty intense. I also used to go down to a lot of gyms. If I saw 3 or 4 fighters from a single gym on a fight card, I would pack my training gear, call the coach up and say, can I come down, train with you guys? You're on this fight show. It'll help me get to know everyone and maybe I can just participate in the class. And I used to do that as well. I think that really helped. And that actually gave me a lot of credibility. And that's pretty much how I got the Cage Warriors job, if I'm honest. So, just
taking initiative. Yeah.
And honestly, it just felt natural. It wasn't, again, any kind of grandiose gesture or thought in order to get anywhere with this. It was just, I'm going to be getting on a microphone in a couple of weeks. How do I do the best job that I can? I need to understand these fighters. How do I get close to them? Oh, instead of having multiple conversations, let's have one visit. Well, if we're going to do that, then I might as well train because I'm not going to be able to train. Do you know what I mean? So everything just seemed pretty natural. And I guess they were the right moves. And if I could still do that kind of thing without getting my ass handed to me every time, I'd happily jump in the cage with Leon Edwards. But I've seen what he can do, so maybe I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I'll just watch that from the outside. I think
Yes.
it's a little bit of a safer distance.
Exactly.
But it's inertia. It's once you start moving, everything else, it just falls into place. Nothing's going to happen if you don't start moving. So once you get the ball rolling, all these other good things, come into play and just fall into place. That's at least how I found, at least for me, when I have a project that I want to take on. As soon as I just doing is the most critical aspect of it. As soon as I start to put the things in motion, it just feels like all the other things, and it's not perfect. Things, fall apart sometimes, but for the most part, I do feel like things do come into play once you start to get the ball rolling. So I have another question. Earlier, you mentioned Dan Hardy, who I absolutely love, and I love the show. You guys, I watch it every time before one of the main events. How important it is? Do you think the kind of chemistry that you and him have? Because I feel like there's a few other teams, not necessarily in the UFC, but in sports in general. And I feel like if you don't have that chemistry, I don't know, the commentating isn't as good. There was in the New Zealand event, I think it was Carolina that was coming out. And I believe he mentioned that she was a new vegan. Yeah. And then he kind of, he made a dig about you. And you two kind of had like a shared laugh, and because I know that you're vegan, that made me laugh as well. And I feel like that's a good dynamic to have between two people.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of maybe like tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd like to think, if I'm honest, that I have one of those personality types that it's not combative and it's not about me. It's certainly not about me. It's probably not about Dan either, but it is about getting the best out of Dan in order to further the understanding of mixed martial arts, promote the UFC, tell the story of the fighters, and layer the fight itself. So in that, you naturally have to concede certain roles, not concede, respect certain roles, understand what one another can bring to the table, trust one another. Like if I'm going to get the mic for a little bit here, Dan, trust me. I know that you've got a point here, but I feel like what I'm about to tee you up with will help you go another level deeper. And just things like that. And I am grateful that from day dot, Dan trusted that I knew my way around an MMA broadcast and calling fights because of my time with Cage Warriors. And I don't think that he really knew who I was because he was in the States. Cage Warriors is a European promotion, and I'm sure he saw some fighters come from over there, but I don't know. I don't think that he was necessarily tuning in, going, "Oh, I quite like the sound of this guy." So I'm always grateful that he actually just sat back and allowed me my space and to show him what I could bring, and then how we could complement one another. And I think like when you consider Goldie and Rogan, like Goldie wasn't someone who knows the nuances of wrestling or jiu-jitsu, but he knew that Joe did, so he just gets out of the way when it goes there. And he knew enough standing up, but Joe obviously weighs in as well. So that's how that dynamic worked. Now, Dan knows that I train. We're lucky that we get to train together every now and then. So I can cover off the easy stuff. Your job's to go a little deeper. And I hope that that's where I feel my difference is to, say, Mike Goldberg. I don't have the lungs that he does, the short one-liners that he does, but hopefully I can bring from my experience of being around martial arts, hopefully I can just go a little bit deeper with the technical aspect and the empathy as well of what's going on. So So I think that there's an understanding in that sense. Now, we could have that without being friends, if I'm honest, because we're professionals, but we genuinely are friends as well. And I enjoy spending time with him. And that's where it becomes tricky, is if you're on the road with someone a lot, then you are, I'm sure, like Mike and Joe they used to work, week in, week out. It's difficult, but like I respect Dan. I've gotten to know, what his hot buttons are and not to go anywhere near them. I know when to give him space, and Dan's very kind to me. Like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I don't walk into every show looking like I own it. I'm like, I'm not prepared enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. And Dan does a good job. I'm probably getting a bit tired of it, by going, dude, you've got this. You've always got this. You're always hard on yourself. Just relax. We're going to go out there and have fun. And that's, I don't know what I do for him, by the way, but he certainly does that for
me. Well, I'm sure it's mutual. But even after, I don't know how many, but 50 or 100 or even more events, it's still nerve-wracking, right? Like it's just, I mean,
for sure.
I'm sure there's a point where it just levels off, where it's just, you just step in and you do the event like it's nothing, or is it just that it's just part of it? It's just always going to be a little nerve-wracking.
This is going to sound really, really bizarre, and so the way that I approach all of this, because I'm not a TV broadcaster, like I'm a martial artist before I am like a TV broadcaster. So I actually approach all of this like I do martial arts. Like, so this is like my next fight. So I have a fight camp for it. I'm preparing for it. I start eating differently. I go to bed at different times. I shut a little bit off from my family, which I'm trying not to do so much these days. But I'm not as easy to live with. I don't help out around the house as much, like this week. So I do that. And I also, for some reason, have it ingrained in my mind that you're only as good as your last show. I think in TV, it is unfortunately a little bit like that. I don't know how secure anyone's job is when they're behind a mic or in front of a camera, particularly if you don't have years and years, like decades of legacy where someone's always going to like pick you up and you'll always be good. I would love to be able to get to that kind of status one day, but one step at a time. So my approach very much is I have to work as hard as I can. I have to, and I feel a huge sense of responsibility towards the sport of mixed martial arts, the athletes, the UFC, whoever I'm working with, and obviously to myself. And it's probably too much, and I'm getting better at not putting as much pressure on, and I don't verbalize it, but I don't also ever want to get complacent. And Dan knows that, and I don't think there is ever a chance of me doing that. It's actually like stops me from going the other way. But that's where I'm at with all of this. Like, I can't afford for this to go away. I still feel like I have so much more to give. I'm still enjoying this ride. This is what I do. So I want to keep, and I'm grateful for it. I want to give it everything. Those fighters that get into that octagon, Joanna and Shang Wei Li, put everything on the line. Like, I could be calling a fight like that in London. I have to do everything that I can. And with that, then comes a level of anxiety that my own expectations walking into the broadcast.
So earlier, I kind of mentioned offhand that you were a vegan, and obviously we've been seeing an increase in vegan athletes, vegan documentary, vegan food, just veganism in general is something that's, on the uptick. I myself am, I'm like I'd say 95% vegan, so almost 100. But I feel like in the UFC, you don't really see, compared to other sports, you don't really see as many vegan athletes. There's a couple here and there, but it's not really a thing. It's actually, I feel like it's the opposite. It's more, keto heavy, carnivorous type of diets that for some reason are getting championed by the athletes of the UFC and probably Bellator and other MMA organizations. Do you think there's going to be a time where more athletes in the UFC are going to, start seeing a vegan diet?
Yeah, I've actually seen a steady uptick, and you've got to consider just general populace. What's the percentage of vegans out there? It's a couple of percent. So then you take a couple of percent of the 600 roster, and it's probably representative. I think also when you are an elite level athlete, your nutrition is such an important and big part of your overall strategy that experimentation in that area is going to be difficult to do. Excuse me. So you don't see many athletes flip-flopping with huge dietary changes. They're obviously clean up their diet, for example, and calories and macros, etc. But I think it's rare. Like, you won't just get an athlete doing veganuary, especially if they've got a fight coming up in February. It's just not. I would never, and I certainly, even as someone who advocates a plant-based diet, no, don't do that. Oh, John, you look like you're enjoying your plant-based. Yeah, you've got a fight coming up. Don't do that now. Don't do that now. So I think that's maybe another reason. I think one of the reasons why we have carnivorous people following that kind of thing, or the hunting side. Culturally, again, in North America, I think that's a bigger thing than what it is in other parts of the world.
Definitely.
So there's that. Joe Rogan is the loudest voice that we have in mixed martial arts. So a lot of people will be tuning into him.
Joe Rogan is basically the Oprah for men. Whatever Joe says, whatever product that he will promote, they're going to sell out the next day. I see it all the time. He's so powerful. So powerful and educated. And I love him. He's great.
Absolutely. And as much as people might think that I would be against a lot of what Joe stands for, I think you'll find I'm probably more closely aligned with a lot of Joe's beliefs and the way that he goes through life than I would be as someone who's completely oblivious and just, goes and picks up a 3-pack of chicken breasts off of a shelf. So that's probably another reason. And also we're in a very alpha male sport. So I think that a lot of those elements are probably still there for a greater proportion of the athletes that are present. I think it's just what it is. But things like the game changers, whether you have bought into it or not, the idea of sports people in general still being able to function and flourish and be on a plant-based diet actually got a lot of people thinking and talking, because I don't believe people want to do harm. I think that there are a lot of things that we can't ignore via the animal agriculture industry. Like, it is bad for the planet, regardless of your compassionate beliefs. But just generally speaking, it's not great. Is it sustainable? Probably not. Is it a mathematical equation that never makes sense? Yes. None of us are disagreeing with that. So when you see other alternatives that suddenly become viable for elite level human performance, then even the average man on the street's going, oh my God, you can still do that crazy stuff and you don't have to eat meat, and apparently it's affordable and not that difficult. I think I might give this a go. So it's going to take a few more documentaries like that. It's going to take a few more examples. I think there's space for everyone. I don't think everyone has to go plant-based, but it's just how I choose to live my life.
Yeah. And I think even, every time we see something big happening, like even the coronavirus right now, it is related to consumption of animals, be it, wildlife and the wet markets in China, which is a completely different story. But, when we see horrific fires in Australia and in California, and they're related to climate change, and then that's related to animal agriculture. And I just see there's a pattern of bad things happening in the world, bad things happening to people, and a lot of it is related to animal agriculture. So I think slowly, obviously, there's still a lot of misinformation out there. And I also don't think that 100% of people should go plant-based. Maybe some people, it's not the right diet for them.
No.
Everyone's body's different and it reacts differently. So, but I do think that we're going to see a gradual movement towards a more plant-based lifestyle. And it's, now we have cultured meats that are on the horizon. So I don't know, a few years, maybe those will go out on the market and we'll see, how society reacts. It's a little bit of a weird, I mean, it should be the same, but psychologically it's a little weird to eat something grown in a lab. But I feel like there's a lot of education happening now and things that we are, 10, 15 years ago, no one had their phone in their hands. Now, no one can not have their phone in their hands. So we change and evolve and, or devolve all the time. It depends how you look at it. So
sure.
I think that is a change that we will see.
Yeah. I think I agree.
So a few more questions I have for you, and then we'll go on to, I actually posted on Reddit and Instagram that, we were going to be chatting today. So I got a few questions from,
nice.
From some people. So that should be fun. Do you think, I feel like in the US, they're maybe not as accepting of foreign accents. Do you think that's why the UFC has you and Dan Hartley mostly covering, the European events and not so much the American ones?
Quite possibly. I think that's, the feedback that I have generally had has been mixed, which would then lead me to say that, yes, the accent is a problem. And not just the accent. Sometimes one can be colloquial. And I have phrases that I say all day, every day.
Yeah.
Not all day, every day. But I would say in the UK, and you guys will not know what I'm talking about. And I have been guilty of that. Yeah. And that's been fed back. My producers are stateside. They're Americans. And they're like, you've got to explain what that is, John, because I have no idea what you just said. And I have had that come back a couple of times. I've had a lot of
they need American subtitles on the bottom. American subtitles.
There you go. Yeah. But then we need an English person to do that because no one understands what I'm saying. So I think that has been a challenge. I don't have a visa to work stateside, so that's the immediate problem. To get a visa to work stateside is super expensive, apparently. Multiple thousands or even like $10,000 has been banded around. So we have a team. There are three of us in the play-by-play seat. So it seems to be working with what's going on right now. So I can't see the guys wanting to change that. I'm happy being a part of it. Of course, I love it in the US. I truly love it. And my dad really moved us stateside when I was about 11. My wife loves New York, for example. And I've kind of said to her about moving to the US many times over the years. Who knows what's in our future? But yes, what can I do about it? Like, I have an English accent. I'm proud of who I am and where I'm from. Again, the authenticity thing comes into it. But although I do dial it back on the colloquialisms, and actually, I say that, it's quite funny. Throughout the week, I will probably be in touch with my producers 5 or 6 times, literally saying, do you say this in the US? Do you understand what this phrase is? Do you know what I mean? When I've written
give us a good example. I'd love to hear one.
It's hard to come up because I kind of sometimes scratch them from memory. But I think things like it's a cracker. I know that my one of my producers, he thinks that's hilarious. He's a big Guy Ritchie films fan. So there's a few. You guys have it's a barn burner, I think, as well. It's absolutely bonkers. There's just he's knackered. No one understood what that was. Knackered. He's knackered. I
know knackered. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, Knack is tired.
There you go. Apparently not everyone knew that. Another one was, seems like he's got a real bee in his bonnet about this one. That's like he's
Oh,
got a problem.
that's a tough one. Yeah, but a
Yeah.
problem, right? Yeah,
He's got a problem with this. Yeah. But then at the same time, I listened. Like it's been hilarious, by the way. So I can tell you, there's been more than 10 occasions where we've been in meetings where we've just dived into Google, and I'm being quizzed on American phrasing, and I'm quizzing my colleagues on English phrasing, and we're seeing if we can understand one another. Jonesing,
That's hilarious.
that came up. Jonesing isn't a phrase that we use in the UK, but I hear both Anik and Brendan have said have used that before. So it's sometimes I'm trying to adopt these phrases as well, just to sort of be a little bit more palatable every now and then. We've had to take out my pronunciation of certain college football or baseball every now and then. I think the Horned Frogs got scratched one time because it just sounds too wrong. You can't have Gooden saying the Horned Frogs. So I think we went with something else. It is funny. I do find it quite amusing. It's an interesting and amusing battle. It's not. We have fun with it. But
to be fair,
I was just going to say it's an international sport. We have fighters from all over, and I think that it's good to be representative.
Yeah, to be fair, most Americans are probably jealous of the accent. They feel there's a little bit of a inferiority complex. Sometimes it's like, oh, they're more sophisticated. It's a proper English. So it's a little bit of a mix, and it's probably a mix of we can't fully understand what he's saying. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, who knows? It does make me laugh that you guys think that we're automatically like sophisticated, or it's like a sign of. Weirdly, like a sign of intelligence for some. And I'm like, dude, you're listening to the wrong person for that. But yes, it is fun. Our perceptions of one. I love the different accents that we come across all around the globe. It's what makes this job very unique and special.
Yeah, 100%. So switch it up just a little bit. I read that you walked the 90-mile walk to raise awareness on mental health issues and raise money for the Young Minds Trust.
Yes.
Is that a cause that you're passionate about? Is that something that you're affiliated with and work with?
Yeah, well, it was that year. So
okay,
men's health. I was kind of walking to raise awareness for men's health and for young people as well. But just generally speaking, mental health is a really big topic of discussion. I think in our sport, I did that the year after we'd lost a coach in the UK, an SBG coach, SBG Manchester actually. We'd lost him. We'd also lost a coach in the US, in Las Vegas as well. We had a few people in those senior positions, like tribal leaders, mentors to so many that had taken their own lives, men who we thought were just so strong and were leading these groups of incredible athletes. And then also I've had a couple of friends, but again, like the other year, a friend of mine who was the smiliest guy in the room. He was very successful, worked in the financial markets, beautiful family. You just thought that everything was just rosy for him, and he took his own life, and it's just so tragic. It's so tragic. No one understands it enough. So yes, I was happy to join this cause to try and raise awareness. I will continue to do things for that charity. I'm actually doing something called Endure 24 in July, providing work doesn't get in the way, where I'm, rather than running, I'm now in a team of 4 running for 24 hours it's going to be tough. In Leeds.
Are you switching up, or are you running straight 24 hours, or are you splitting up between the time between the 4 of you?
Yeah, time between the 4 of us. So we only one of us can be out there at any one time. So we're trying to decide at the moment whether we go out and run till till the legs fall off, and then come back in and hand over, or whether we do like 10 miles, switch it over, 10 miles, switch it over, and just do as many as we can over that space. So we're just trying to work that out. But yeah, that's for my friend who did some incredible campaign work last year. Super sad story. My friend Ross, he lost his daughter after she was only 11 hours old. And him and his wife were massively affected by this, and Ross really struggled. So he joined an organization for baby loss, and he got very much involved with that. He's one of those people, he's just such a good human. He'd always done a lot of charity work. His nephew, I can't remember what condition he suffered, but he died, I think, when he was about 12 years old. So unfortunately, his family has suffered so much pain, and he's such a giving guy. Anyway, he was doing a lot of work for them, and he did his 100-mile walk as well. I joined him for like about 15, 20 miles when he was bringing it home. So I did a little bit more walking with him there, but now we're doing this thing together. He did 9 events last year. He called it 9 for Nora, which was the name of his daughter. He did 9 big challenges within a calendar year, and he raised, I think, about upwards of £60,000. So he did an amazing job. Yeah, the press caught hold of it. He still does a lot of interviews to the day. But he's taken it one step further, and he's created a network. I think he calls it the Dads and Lads Network, where it's just a WhatsApp group and a few meetups, which is now getting multiple meetups around the UK for people that are struggling, for guys that are struggling. So we're doing it to try and bring some light to that, also for the charities that he works with. And I'm going to speak to him shortly about whether I can put a badge on mine for something called Tiny Tickers, because last year our daughter had to undergo serious open heart surgery to repair a hole in her heart. She was only a year old, so bless her. So there's some machinery that can be, it's only like £750 that most hospitals don't have, but it can detect these things at 20 weeks of pregnancy. So I want to try and do some work to raise awareness and money for getting these machines into more hospitals, more maternity units. So yeah, I don't feel like I've done enough. I feel like I want to do more. And yeah, at the moment I'm on the coattails of a few other people, but yes, hopefully in the future I'll be able to do some more good stuff.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of good things right now, but I feel like with guys, I think there's some sort of shame that they do not want to talk about if they're feeling depressed or anxious or whatever it is that they're going through, because guys have to be strong. And, I personally lost, some people, family members, friends, people I knew from high school to different mental illnesses. So It's definitely a good deed that you're doing and that your friend is doing. And, I hope more people start to catch on and maybe have a more open discussion about these type of things.
For sure. I feel like people are generally, even in our sport, I'm speaking to a lot of fighters sitting just across a table from them, and they're getting very open about how they're addressing certain elements. But then I also hear others that as soon as you kind of bring it up, they fire back. But listen, I'm respectful to everyone and how they deal with it. But for those that do open up, especially athletes and especially fighters, I think it does send a message that, hey, listen, we're not infallible and it's okay to talk.
100%. All right. So the last question from me, and then we'll move on to some fan questions. Well, a little bit of a switch now to something lighter. So what would you say was the most exciting either event or fight that you've covered in the UFC?
Well, it's got to be the Irish card, the Dublin card. That's got to be the most exciting event. That was just crazy. It was early on in my UFC days as well, so everything was still pretty new. But the rise of Conor and also the other Irish fighters, because without their victories on the night, they had a clean sweep. It wouldn't have gotten to the point that it had done. It was just euphoric. And I'd spent a lot of time with a lot of the people that were on that card over the years, grown up on the circuit with them, if you like. So to see them get these wins or to be part of something like that was just awesome. And yeah, I always go back to it. It was such an incredible moment that hasn't really been replicated. Having said that, this fight down in Auckland was also very, very special. Very special.
Oh, it looked insane. It looked insane.
It was unbelievable. And it wasn't just the Felder Hooker fight. And it wasn't just actually the fights on the night. The whole cultural experience that I took from that event was pretty special and different to what I had experienced in Fight Week before. I got out there probably a day earlier than what I normally would. And very kindly, the PR team invited me down to the ceremony that they had, like a welcoming ceremony, but it was super intimidating, if I'm honest. And I saw how like the local land and everything. Oh, it was crazy. But it was so unique and so good to have been there and be a part of it. And of course, I was doing my research and listening to all of the Kiwi guys speak in a certain vernacular about what they were trying to do, and we loyal to the soil and doing it for the culture, and a few other kind of tags that they were putting on social media and in their interviews. And I understood it a lot more by the few experiences that I had. Tried to bring it across in the broadcast, and then, of course, but the fights make everything. You have incredible fights, and my job becomes easy. Everyone's happy, and well, you saw the fights; they were pretty incredible, and the fans,
amazing,
bonkers, deafening, so noisy in there, so loud.
It seems like every time there's an event, outside, it doesn't matter if it's England, Brazil, China, Russia. Well, I don't know if they've had one in Russia, actually, maybe one. But just when they go abroad, the local fighters tend to do well, right? Australia, New Zealand, they usually win.
I don't know. I think Sweden, not the last card, the card before that, I think only one Swedish fighter was victorious. Germany.
That's sad.
Yeah, Germany again. I'm not sure. So it's not always the case.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you get when you go to these international cards typically is attendance early on. So you automatically, the energy builds faster earlier. So when it reaches fever pitch by the main event, whereas I feel like it's not quite boxing yet in Vegas, but how many people are in their seats, certainly for the Fight Pass prelims and then the prelims. It's kind of the mecca. So people are coming in, but there aren't so many local Vegas fighters, if you like, that are big ticket sellers. And that's maybe a difference. They get the big fights, but listen, you don't have to have a big name to have a big fight. And that's why people keep calling them sleeper cards. I see it all the time, people digging out a lot of the cards that I end up working on. But time and time again, people are just blown away by what they've witnessed. And, it's always, of course, a pleasure to have been there to witness it.
Wow, some of the fight nights are actually better than the main event. Like, look at the fight that's happening this weekend. Kevin Lee, Charles Oliver. That's the whole card is great. That's a great card. Yeah. And then following week as well. It's probably. Are you doing that? Are you calling that fight? The Woodley.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. All right, cool. So let's move on to some questions from Reddit and Instagram. All right, let's see. All right, so first question. Ask him. All right, so what is each of Tony and what did Tony and Khabib need to do to win, and who do you expect to win?
Stay healthy. That's the first one.
Yeah. Just make it to the fight.
Make it to the fight, please, please, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that Tony needs to be as crazy and wacky as he is. Just be that guy. Don't stutter in any of your beats, because it just takes a half a step and Habib will be in on your hips or your legs, and you are going down to the canvas. And I just don't think that you want him to instigate that. You need to have it on your own terms. I'm not saying that he's not capable of scrambling out and actually threatening, even when Habib is initiating or has completed a takedown. I think that's what is exciting a lot of fans, the fact that he has such aggressive jiu-jitsu that he can, when you think you're safe, all of a sudden Tony's preparing something pretty wild. But the way that Habib fights, he doesn't take a lot of damage when he takes you down. So he needs to be first, and he needs to try and make things happen on his own terms. And of course, I think therefore the same must be said for Habib, who needs to either be all the way in or all the way out. You don't want to be in that mid-range with Tony because he'll slice you up. And he will need to wrap the arms, the limbs very, very quickly. We know that as soon as Habib scores a takedown, he'll get those Dagestani leg irons on you. He'll lace the legs. He'll figure four those legs so that you're demobilized. But also what's important is to start threading through, grabbing wrists and so much pressure on other arms that he can do damage and he can't get hurt. I think that's what he does, but he just needs to be even more clinical with it.
Yeah. So who do you expect to win?
Well, I think the odds are going to be with Habib. The guy, no one has figured out a way to beat him yet. So that's where the betting money will probably lie. But I think right now, from what I have seen, the person with the best chance of beating Habib is Tony Ferguson, which is why we all want to see this fight. I just pray that we see the best version of each of them when we get there. It was interesting. I hadn't really considered the age thing on Tony's part, but it came up in the press conference. I'd sort of overlooked that. But I mean, I don't think he's past it, but I think he's got a lot of wisdom there as well. He's an interesting dude. He's an outlier for sure. So I don't think it's a big problem for this fight this year.
He's so funny. He's standing there with shades on, and he's telling Khabib, take your shades off, take your glasses off. He's a character.
Oh, dude, what were those gloves? Like I still like I think I get it. He was trying. It was something to do with the game, right? And then the baseball was if they run away and like the 3 strikes thing. It's a bit bizarre.
It was, but it's what makes Tony. It's
exactly
like that. You accept it. It's like, all right, that's part of the character.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I think we kind of covered this, but I'll still ask it. Did you start training BJJ before or after you started working for the UFC?
Oh no, I've been training a long time before. So I think I first started training BJJ, and I'm terrible, by the way. I've had a lot of time off. I think I first started doing some grappling or mixed martial arts around 2007, I'm going to say. It was around that time. I think I finally found an MMA team in 2007. So maybe 2006, I was trying to chain it together a little bit. But I did it very casually. There was a period where I'd gotten pretty fit and was sort of fight ready. I only had a couple of amateur fights, but I was about to step it up to have what was called a semi-pro fight back here in the UK. But unfortunately, I hurt my knee, and then from there, I just had every other injury possible. And to the day, I'm still sort of struggling to get consistent training. But now I don't have to worry about it for a record or anything like that. I'm just enjoying the journey. I now have a gi. So I practice in the gi. Nice. That was something that I didn't do until recently. So the journey continues.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at an age now where at least 3 to 4 times a week I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, this thing hurts. It didn't used to hurt, but it hurts now. I don't know why. And and then the next week something new hurts. So it's just it's at a certain age where just shit starts to hurt all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier. And it gets to a point now, like training twice a week actually hurts more than training 3 or 4 times a week, because it takes a couple of reps for me to get my body into it.
Yeah.
And providing I don't get any like crazy kind of acute injury during that time, which unfortunately does happen fairly regularly. But if my body's still kind of in the shock of the training and the training load 3 times a week, then I can carry it. If I'm in and out just twice a week, then it just doesn't work. And that's typically what I'm able to train. And I end up just being in pain so much. But yeah, you have to leave the ego behind and just get over it. Put the big pants on and keep going.
There we go. All right. What do you think of your current role with the UFC, and where would you like to be in 5 years? For context, he's currently working the European events, but are you aspiring to be, an annex successor?
Well, I think I'd like to say I'm the international guy, because I did first of all come on to do European, and then I think my second gig was actually in Abu Dhabi. But I've just done New Zealand. I've been to Brazil. Other parts of South America, I get opportunities on the desk as well. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is I do a fair bit of producer work for the UFC. So if there's a European fighter in a main event, the chances are I was the guy that was producing that feature that you guys all see on Fight Night. So I do quite a bit of work in that capacity as well. So listen, I'm happy to be the utility guy. I'm kind of doing, I enjoy, as I've always said, this is about the sport, and I'm trying my best to help with just growing the sport in any which way that I can. And because I've got such a varied background, I know what I enjoy, and I also know where I can add some value, and I know what I don't want to go back to. I don't particularly want to go back to pulling cables through a loft, wiring lights and testing electrical systems in the cold. And I just, there's nothing wrong in that. It's just,
it's not for you.
Not necessarily, although I have been having to, who knows? Listen, I don't mean to drag this down like right now.
I did see you did a good job with your house though.
And you know what, that was good, because it was on my own terms, and I managed to save a bunch of cash because I had the tools, I have the know-how. I spent a long time as a tradesman and picking up tips off of everyone else, and I'd done some work on properties with my dad as well, so I knew a little bit more than just cables and stuff. So yeah, that was very handy to be able to do that. And actually, it would be a nice complement to what I'm doing. Would be to do a bit of property development on the side. It's just, so yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I've been back doing some electrical work this year. We've had some down periods with the UFC, and my dad still has a business, and it's not so bad for me because I do it to help him rather than doing it for a necessity. So that kind of changed the mental on that, and it feels good to help my dad rather than this is my job. But dude, this coronavirus thing, the more I'm reading about it, and I think it's a little bit different over here in the UK, because like Italy's on full lockdown, no one in, no one out.
Italy's closed. It's closed for business.
Exactly that. But the massive hit to the world economy right now. I'm not an active investor. I'm a bit of a voyeur of the stock markets, and I don't have the money to invest, but I hopefully one day will. Everything's taken a bit of a hit, and if businesses close, then it's going to be awful. And unfortunately, the first thing that's going to get shut down are big, large gatherings. And sadly for us, events are gatherings of multiple thousands of people. So, I mean, everything looks good for London. Like I've checked in various places, and it's all cool. But if this thing gets to the heights where a lot of people say it could potentially do, and I know there's a lot of scaremongery out there, I could well be going back to pulling cables in lofts because I haven't been able to accrue any kind of big old nest egg that I can sit back and live off of. So who knows? I'm not going to be so down on being a tradesman just now.
Yeah, I think I mean there's nothing wrong with being a tradesman. It's just certain people want to do certain things. So everyone's good at something, and you're good at this, and I definitely think this is something you should be doing. But I feel like.
And to answer the question, look, I am a team player. Of course, it would be lovely to have on my resume that I'd worked on a pay-per-view show. But we'll see. But I've been here. This is now 6 years with the organization. If I was doing anything wrong, then I would have been gone. So I'm happy to keep riding along as we are. If they want to increase my load, my responsibilities, something else will have to go to the side. But I'm very ambitious and I'm a perfectionist. I'm only going to get better at this. I'm only going to be pushing. So whatever they want to do is fine by me. And but I don't necessarily I see John as I celebrate the fact when he's on air and he's so smooth. And Brendan's
so
becoming,
smooth,
Brendan's becoming someone that I actually see Brendan on the road quite a bit because when he's doing commentary, I might be doing the desk and vice versa. I think he's coming to London. He's a really good established broadcaster who's turned his hand to commentary so well. It's actually it sickens me to say it. He's picked this up so quick. It doesn't. I'm really truly happy for him, and I'm truly happy for the team. Because I think we got a good team. We all get on. Certainly in the commentary, all the commentators all get on. So, yeah, man, it's I just don't want this bit to end. I'm happy for this to continue until I retire.
Amen to that. All right, next question. This is a funny one. Will Dana bring out his own brand of ketchup?
Have I missed something here? I think I've missed something here. What haven't I been across? What is the?
This is funny.
What is this inferring to?
Yeah, so there's some. What do they call them? I think on the Reddit, on the subreddit, the MMA subreddit, they call him, and I'm going to be posting this on that subreddit, so I hope I don't get starched. But there's something like a tomato, the big tomato, or the goof tomato, or something with goof and tomato, or perhaps but there's definitely something with tomato there. So I guess that's the reference.
Is the reference because he gets super excited
and gets super red? Yeah,
right. Listen, if Dana wanted to bring out a ketchup brand, he could do it.
He'd kill it,
and it'd probably become the best ketchup brand on the market. If Dana then wanted to bring out a competitor to that ketchup brand, he would bury the previous ketchup brand, and then he'd become a millionaire on the second ketchup brand. That guy is a phenomenal.
He can sell ice to Eskimos. He can sell anything.
You guys don't know I don't know the full detail of what he does, but from just the production side of things, the attention to detail, the amount of input that Dana still wants and has in the broadcast blows my mind. He is so invested in this. He knows what he wants. He knows what works. I don't know how he does it. And I mean that with more respect than I could verbalize. That is such a big organization. And the details that he still enjoys tweaking, it's just phenomenal. It really is. And he's got a great team as well. He's a one of a kind for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and he's the biggest promoter in all of sports, I would assume. So
I guess we forget
he's
that.
Doing something.
Yeah,
he's the biggest. There's no one bigger. So he's doing something right. He's been developing these skills over the last 15, 20 years, and he's the pinnacle. He's the top dog right now.
Oh yeah.
All right, next question. Ask him if he took anything from English football commentators, his favorites, and the best line of commentary he heard. And why is it "Take a bow, son"?
Oh, take a bow, son. Do you understand that? Do you understand that reference?
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, no?
Yeah. I mean, if you do something great, then you just take a bow.
Just take a bow.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the one that the English folk would hear such a lot is they think it's all over. It is now the World Cup win in football, 1966. That's the one. I actually do listen to a lot of other sports, and I like to say I'm a wordsmith. I like language. So I will listen to, I tell you, like someone who you might, Rich Roll, for example. Do you listen to his podcast?
He's great.
He has such a brilliant vocabulary. I've just naturally, I've listened to him so much. I find myself talking with some of the words and the verbiage that he uses, and it's come out in commentary. I think one of the words that Dan loved was percolate. Like I'd never used that before, but Rich Roll says it. I've listened. Rich Roll says that. That's what Rich Roll says. But he's very good with language. I remember watching, I think it was the Olympics. I think it was figure skating, and I'm probably going to get crucified for saying this. I can't remember what the line was, by the way, but I remember a way that the commentators had said something, and I thought, of all of this, I was just watching it. I wasn't really into it, but something stood out. So I remember taking note of that and then rearranging it for MMA. And so I'm always listening out for different ways of phrasing things. Just to mix it up. For example, everyone calls the referee a referee apart from me. Like I'm calling him the Octagon Ranger. I'm calling him an Octagon official. Do you know what I mean? I just want to mix this shit up. Mike Goldberg.
That's classic.
Mike Goldberg's the godfather. He laid all of this down. He wrote the playbook on how to call fights in mixed martial arts. But I want to kind of add a new chapter to that. I want to do things differently. And I like to, those bits which everyone hears all the time, it gets a bit boring. All of a sudden, if I say something that's a little bit wacky, it might pique their attention, draw them in for a second. But who an Octagon official? What's different about him? So that's
the sheriff of the Octagon. Yeah,
there you go. Listen out.
start getting creative now. All right,
this is it.
I remember I started listening to Russell Brand a few years back, and in the beginning, it was almost like I had to take an encyclopedia every other word. I was like, dude, how are you coming up with all these huge, massive words to describe all these different things all the time? But, I think that's great. I think it elevates you. It elevates your vocabulary. So, I like to listen to people like Rich Roll and Russell Brand and Joe Rogan, obviously, and a lot of others. Sam Harris is obviously an amazing individual. He's so careful with his words. There's no in between or buffers. Everything he says has a meaning, has a reason why he's saying it. There's no likes and ums, and he's really good. I thoroughly enjoy listening to him. And if I could one day be half of what he is, as far as just putting my words out, I think I'd be extremely happy. All right, next one. Does he have a specific philosophy approach to how commentary should be? For example, Rogan almost always tried to be positive and celebrate a fighter's strength rather than dunk on someone's weakness like they do in boxing, even on an undercard fighter.
Yeah, I'm all about celebration. It's got to be celebratory. Again, we're in a different spot to boxing. I mean, on a personality level, and as someone who enjoys martial arts, look what they do. Look at Joanna. I see people on my feed that were mocking her, and someone responded to a video that I put out, and they were saying, I won't get into it, but I'm like, really? How can you see the good in this? Look at what these people go through. So very quickly, one, I don't think it's ever really my job to critique unless it's glaringly obvious. But if there's critique to come, how can I critique when I'm sat next to Dan Hardy, Daniel Cormier, or Paul Felder? I let those guys critique because they've they've been in front of this audience and can do it. Whether I think something is right or wrong, sometimes it's just, it's not for me to say, you know, and I think it is very important that we celebrate rather than pull people down. I think that's a cultural thing that I'm not on board with, generally speaking. But even when I do think that, let's say, for example, the fighters are being a bit timid, I will think carefully before I say that. I'll think carefully before I'm digging a performance out, because you never know why. So even if I do, I might layer that with, there must be a reason why. I've seen this fighter do better, reach higher heights. Something's amiss for this one. And I might try and like give a reason for that. But generally speaking, it's about celebrating that the whole fight night is.
Yeah, I appreciate and definitely appreciate that type of approach. All right, a couple more questions. Let's see. Who do you think Conor's next fight is going to be?
I think Gaethje. It looks like that's what's...
It's got to be Gaethje. Oh,
yeah, I think it's going to be Gaethje. That's a great fight. Yeah, Gaethje's all kinds of fired up about it. We haven't heard from Conor. Have they made a fight for Poirier? Is that Dan Hooker?
Yeah, Dan Hooker.
Yeah. So that, I mean,
it's a great
he's
one.
He's the only one left.
Conor he's the only one left, unless they do a Diaz fight, because I think Usman's already fighting with what's it called, Masvidal.
Yeah.
So I think it's either Diaz trilogy or Gaethje.
Yeah, I think the Gaethje fight is the one that comes next. I think it's the one that makes most sense. Yeah, and Conor wants to get out there and do this season. That Diaz trilogy is there whenever. Doesn't even have to be this year. He can play that one back whenever. Yeah. So I think right now, for what he wants to achieve, to align himself for honors at lightweight again, you know, Gaethje's the guy.
How does he handle those leg kicks?
I mean, but we've kind of been saying that all through his career, right? Why has no one attacked his legs so far? He's got very long arms.
And his build is very unique.
It is, and it's hard to kick the legs when you're going backwards as well. So, I mean, I'm sure Cowboy was probably going to be looking at that as part of his strategy, but he didn't get there. I mean, kind of just, it surprises you every time, right? So, I don't know, but we're going to get that answered. Gaethje is legit, and he offers very solid wrestling, ridiculous power, and of course, a high percentage of leg attacks. So, man, we're going to answer some questions.
Can't wait for them to announce that. All right, who do you think Darren Till's next fight's going to be?
I really don't know. I'm lined up to interview him in London, actually. So we're going to find out. But it looked like they were going to try and make that Cannonier fight, and it hasn't materialized. So we shall see. Maybe, like, who knows? I think that Darren probably want to fight soon. I was up in Liverpool at his gym only last week, the week before, on another project that I'm working on. And he's training hard. He looks good, like not inflamed. He's like bulking out, but also at the same time he's putting the hard miles in so that he's in fight shape. So I don't know. He was hinting at Romero, wasn't he? So
good.
Who knows? That would be interesting. So we shall see. But he's another one. What a crazy story he's had to and rise. Looking forward to seeing Till back in the octagon.
And I do not know how he was cutting to 170. That's just I don't know.
Brutal.
I brutal. I was looking at one of his weight cuts, and I remember him crawling out of the sauna, and you know that can be healthy for the body, for the mind. It almost like gym.
They're so
It's
mentally
almost like
tough.
disturbing to watch it, though. It's almost disturbing. I was like, I don't want to see you suffering in that way just to make the weight, So I'm happy to see him at 85 now. I think that's where he belongs.
Culturally, this is the one thing about the sport that I want us to evolve from. I just want it to go away. I know that there are specialists that do it. There are people that enjoy it and get advantages from it, but I just don't think that that's sport wide, and I just want to see it go away. I can't wait. My fight week for everyone will just be so much more pleasant.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, and now the final question, and the most important one: do you have a dog? And if you do, what kind of dog do you have?
Oh yeah. So I do have a dog. I actually have the most dangerous dog in the world. It is the dog which has the most reported cases of it. Is maybe worse than that. I have a wiener dog. I have a Dachshund, a miniature Dachshund. Rupert the sausage dog. Yeah, boy. Yeah, you see, I don't need a pit bull to elevate my masculinity. No. I actually have to.
Yeah, you walk down the street, people are just crossing the street left and right.
Dude, I'm because I look so intimidating at the best of times. I thought it's best. I need to get a little dog like that, just so that I soften the appearance a little bit. So we went with the sausage. Yeah,
you don't want to freak people out.
Nah,
yeah,
listen,
good. Yeah,
never judge a book, right? Never judge a book.
Yeah. I have two dogs. I have a pit bull and a pointer mix, and the pit bull is pretty much a teddy bear with a heart and organs. Like all it does is it just wants to sleep and cuddle. It's a teddy bear. It's like Ted. Remember that movie Ted?
Yeah.
But like a sweet Ted, not like a Ted that smokes weed and and fucks and all that stuff. Just like a sweet teddy bear that just happens to be alive.
Yeah, they're very cool. No, I've now forgotten the breed of the dog that I really love. What's the South African hunting dog that's got a little mane? Oh my word! I forgot what they're called.
What does it look like?
It's like a sort of tawny color, like a sandy color. No. They're big. They're big dogs.
Not a Ridgeback, right?
There you go, Rhodesian Ridgeback.
A Ridgeback?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love them. Those are amazing.
Beautiful dog, and not typically like an aggressive dog that you see, roadmen on the corners, holding to, frighten people. They're a beautiful dog. I've met a couple in the past, and I'd love a proper dog like that one day. But little Rupert, he's 10 years young now, and actually is the longest surviving dog. I think that the record is something like 24, 26 years. I'm like, dude,
Jesus.
Please, like that's a big investment. When I signed up to this, I wasn't sure that you were going to start hitting your 20s. To have a conversation, but
you need to leave the house, find an apartment.
Exactly.
Once they hit 20,
exactly. But no, I've had dogs all my life. He is definitely the smallest dog I've ever had. But yeah, I love animals, man. They're very cool.
Yeah, I'm the same. I hope to leave, the New York City apartment in the next couple of years, just so we can have a backyard or just a large lawn that we can get 4, 5, 6 dogs, just let them run around. Right now, two is good for this type of size apartment in New York City, but anything more than 2, it gets a little stuffy. So hopefully, we get to move out to the suburbs or to the mountains or something. We'll see.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the plan. Well, John, this has been great. It's been amazing. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes and talking to us. Really appreciate it. Just tell people maybe where they can find you on social media. I forgot to mention you have your YouTube channel, The Journey to Discovery. You guys should check it out. It's got great videos. And you have a social media account that people can find you on?
Yeah, so it's John Gooden UK across, doing most of my stuff on Instagram and Twitter. A little bit on LinkedIn as well these days. That seems to be, the algorithms are algorithms over there are pretty kind. So you can put up all kinds of shit and no one pulls it down. So, I'm putting out a lot of stuff. I have something called the Breakfast Breakdown, which is where my coach, Dave Lee, who's fought in the UFC, BJJ black belt, we look at a submission from the previous weekend. On Monday morning, I go to the gym, we put the cameras on, and we talk it through. He breaks down the details. So I'm doing that. I also I try and do my little fight facts preview video coming up for the fights coming up on the weekends. So trying to churn out some more different kinds of content. But that all sits on Instagram, which is pretty much where I'm spending a lot of time these days, much to my wife's dismay.
It's the world we live in.
It is.
All right, John. Yeah. So again, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
And hopefully, hopefully we'll have you back on the show one day.
Nice one. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, man. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.